You're listening to the Raccoon Roundtable podcast, episode number 62. I'm your host, David Oria. I'm here with my co-host,
Chris Sagana, and this episode is just me and David today. David and I are actually inspired by our previous episode with our friend Dan. Dan got really deep into alignment, and David and I, after that episode, started self-reflecting our past selves to see how alignment impacted not just our physical well-being, but mainly our mental well-being. I want to, just like warn everybody as far as we're not mental health experts. We're not like licensed psychologists or anything, but we kind of even go live as far as reflecting live on this podcast. Like, oh, I didn't even think of that way. But we also, one thing I wish that we mentioned in the episode is that we do talk about talking to people and reaching out. But one thing I'd probably say is looking for professional help too. And that's reaching out to, a therapist or somewhere that you can talk to somebody to get a perspective maybe that you weren't expecting. What do you think, David?
Yeah, man. I think just the stuff that we kind of touched on again, it was a little vulnerable, I felt, but
Yeah, same.
you could really feel like literally self-reflection happening in the moment. But just like Chris said, man, like if at any point in time, like if you seeking professional help, that's a tool. That's another tool in your toolbox. Hope you guys enjoy kind of what we shared, and just like kind of the level of vulnerability that we kind of went through. But hope you guys like it. So I think what's interesting is that we had like a really awesome conversation with our previous guest, Dan. And I don't know about you, but for me, that got me thinking a lot about just like okay, just to preface, like I felt that I like thought about a lot of that a lot already, and that just kind of like re-engaged that conversation that I had with myself. Like, what about you after having that conversation?
Yeah, I think I have somewhat thought of elements of that conversation, but not to the depth that he provided, which was really enlightening for me. Like I understood that like the mind connects the body and everything, and also maybe like the spirit as far as how you feel. But not to the depth of what he explained.
Yeah, I think it got me thinking just about like my own like alignment, not even currently, just like yes, currently, but also like in the past. I was thinking back to like there were times when maybe I wasn't as like aligned mentally, spiritually, emotionally, physically, and stuff like that. And I think that also contributes to whatever in that moment, like your physical health is like, or whatever in that moment, like what's your mental health like. And I think that kind of maybe that alignment contributes to the result that you actually see, because you don't necessarily always see the alignment when you're looking and talking with other people. Even when you're reflecting on yourself, maybe sometimes you're not really cognizant of that, whether all that's aligned, but then you really just see and feel the effects of your physical wellness, right? If you feel fatigued, or if you feel like super energetic, right? Or if you feel like mentally foggy, or if you feel just like at peace, right? And so maybe we see like the effects of that, but not necessarily looking if all that is actually lined up within us. Does that make sense? Or am I just like kind of messing around?
No, it makes a lot of sense because I mean, when I think about going to the gym and working out, especially in my earlier age, like in my 20s, you may have like this issue in your head mentally, like as far as you're upset about something's bothering you, and you're just kind of told, okay, go to the gym, like sweat it out. Like sometimes it helps. I mean, it actually does help, right? Is it like dopamine or whatever that helps with the brain? But like as you get older, or as at least I've gotten older, that isn't always the quick fix. Like I guess like it kind of fixes at the moment, but then you realize, okay, this is still bothering me. You know what I mean? So do I need to address this issue first that's bothering me mentally in order for everything else to be aligned? Does that make sense? Is that kind of like where you're going to as well?
Yeah, kind of. I think it's it's just like, how do we like fit all of that stuff so that it's like, lined up? Because if you're, I think kind of Dan was alluding to this, and maybe he didn't like exactly say this, but if you're if like your mental doesn't reflect like what you want physically,
Mm,
then maybe like that's going one direction and then this is going the other direction, and it's like they're conflicting almost, or
mm,
they're pursuing two different things. Kind of like the, are you going to the gym because you know, you want to lose weight, lose body fat, lose you know, pounds off the scale, or are you doing it so that you can, you know, be more active with your kids, you know? And then once those things are aligned, then it just, you, I don't know, you just feel better, but also like act differently, act better, I guess, you know, make better decisions. That's like kind of what it really was just like. I was just like, man, like what is going on, you know? And like I even like was reflecting on like on the in the past, um, you know, just like times when I mentally, and this is more just like my mental health, because I know that I definitely went through times where I was just not there, you know, or like not in the right headspace. Like I used to always say that, like I'm just not in the right headspace. And
mm.
then maybe that's like, you know, my verbalization of that misalignment, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah.
I hope does that I feel like I'm just like what am I like philosophically just saying?
No, I think well, I'm glad that we got from that is to really, really think what he was talking about for us really to, I guess, self-reflect, at one point and looking
Yeah.
back and now, because I agree. I think it's when the more that we learn about mental health and the more that it's coming to like the public eye and the more that we get rid of the stigma, you start to look back, you're like, I always thought that that mental health was more related to just the stuff we learn in books, maybe some certain
Mm,
disorders or certain disabilities. Then you realize that there's maybe some kind of different traumas that make you feel a certain way. Even
yeah.
like just talking about depression, when I thought of depression, I was just like, okay, so that's probably like when someone is really just can't get out of bed, maybe like suicidal thoughts to that degree. But understanding that there's different levels of depression, right? And knowing that I think everybody at one point feels some kind of depression with whatever goes on in life because we're all human beings. We all have different feelings. You know what I mean? Like when
Yeah.
I'll go into one when I experienced a heartbreak early in my age, and I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep, I couldn't.
Yeah.
I didn't know if I wanted to wake up sometimes, to be honest with you, man, because of the
Wow.
pain the pain that you feel because it's just all you think about as you wake up, as before you go to sleep. Went to class and I had to like walk out of class sometimes because I just couldn't focus.
Mm,
And looking back, I mean, in the moment, I was just like, this is tough. I'm getting through this. This is really, really difficult, right? I'm talking to people about it, maybe just people I trust, my family. And looking back at it, I'm like, man, I think that was some level of depression. I mean, I don't know if you agree.
no, definitely. I very can totally relate to that. I went through something very, very similar, not necessarily like at younger in age. I was actually in medical school.
Mm,
And what's crazy was that um maybe, yeah, like what you said, there's different like levels of that. And for me, it kind of like affected me differently. I was still, you know, like going to class. I was still like I had to like force myself to do so many
yeah.
things, but I was just you know, I'm not a psychiatrist, but like we learn about psychiatry in school, and there's like criteria, I guess, that define depression, but you know, everyone experiences that those symptoms differently. For me, I found like lack of enjoyment in things that I normally would enjoy. You
Mm,
know, I was very like regimented in going to the gym, and normally like I don't know, I was just there because that was where like I could release like my frustration. You know, I also was getting over like a heartbreak and the compounding stress of medical school, and like miss my family and stuff. And it's just like it was just
mhm.
crazy. And yeah, I think I went through something very, very similar, but you know, but the way that it kind of manifested in my life may be just very different from the way that it manifested in yours. Um, but I totally understand that feeling where you feel like it's like, yeah, I don't know, I just couldn't. It was not myself. I like felt like I
Mm,
was not myself. Did you feel that
mm.
way?
Yeah, yeah. I felt like a part of me was like I guess missing or like like you said, I couldn't be myself. I mean, when I came to like transitioning that my mental space to my physical, my motivations of working out changed. and it probably wasn't the healthiest reasons of why I wanted to work out. I was doing
Yeah,
it for the
dude.
wrong intentions. When we really think of like the mind, body, and soul, it's like, oh man, and knowing how much the mind can affect, I guess, the vision and goal of why you're doing things, man, it's wow. I didn't even really think about that now that we're talking about it. um yeah, no, I think I felt the same way where I just wasn't myself, or there was something about me that was just missing.
Dude, what's like now that you mentioned that, how we were just talking about like how if like your mind and your body like are going two different directions, that causes like more conflict, more misalignment.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like back then, you know, my my mind just like it wanted to be happy, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was going through like a very like rough time and I just wanted to like be happy. And then like my body, like I was just like working out physically to I don't know, like and this is like maybe I don't know people relate to this, but like I was just it was just releasing frustration, but also like you know how that term like revenge body?
Yeah, no, that's exactly I think what it was.
I
That
was
makes sense.
like I wanted to like I was just trying to like get back, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And like that was like the way. And so
Mm-hmm.
like that was like and so to the point where like dude, I was going like twice a day, like again for the wrong reasons, at least I
Mm-hmm.
think for the wrong reasons. And I was like just like not eating because I was basically like starving myself, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And
Wow, man, that's crazy. That's very similar to me. Sorry, go ahead. I just
yeah.
want to say, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that like disconnect, like mentally, like I'm trying to like get over like the sad stuff, but then like my the misalignment with like my body is just like actually like I'm trying to like actually like avenge the anger that I have.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And like dang, like thinking back at that, like wow, that's kind of crazy that that was not they were working in two different directions,
Yeah.
pulling me in two different directions, really.
It's interesting when Dan says that, like, it's a healing, right? It's a healing thing when we think us working out, eating that way, behaving a certain way is what's best for us, but is that really what's healing what's bothering us? You know
You're
what I
like
mean?
hurting yourself, you know?
Exactly, exactly. It's
Yeah.
like where you're like trying to build this shell so people see or think that you're fine, you know? And
Dude,
that's part
totally.
that was the motivation behind, how hard I'd be working out, after that. And I wonder if that's a healthy perspective to have as far as a revenge body. Probably not, most likely
Yeah,
not,
probably
because
not.
you're not addressing what's bothering you, like in mentally.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, man, that's so true. And I didn't even think about like how that was affecting me like spiritually, you know?
Mm-hmm.
That was I'm trying to like reflect on the spot right now and it's like I don't know. And I'm like a person of faith
Mm-hmm.
and I I'm active within my church. I felt like now that I think about it, during that time I felt like I was stepping away from the relationships with people that were important to me within that space. So maybe that's like kind of how
Mm-hmm.
things affected me spiritually. Like I was um I don't know, because like that's a place where, I personally find fulfillment. But
Mm-hmm.
then I was like, I don't know, maybe just felt like I needed to be just alone or needed to like just distance myself from people. But even though that was like a place that was, very fulfilling to me.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, maybe like that was how it kind of affected me like spiritually. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. It does. And I think that's kind of where that whole misalignment thing goes into play too.
Yeah.
I'll say, like, 'cause for me in that moment, that I was describing, I guess spiritually was probably the only place that I was kind of, I guess, aligned in the right place, I would say.
Mm,
I tried to lean heavily, not just my family, but like on people who I would see often at church, which is like my friends Xander and John, guys like that, and them kind of keeping my head straight. I think with as
yeah.
far as spirituality, but yeah, I think just the mental. and physical part of me just kind of lost its way. But yeah, man, just looking back, I mean, look, if when you said you're kind of distancing yourself, like what got you out of that? I guess did you eventually talk to people about it, or
Um, I think one of the biggest things. So when I was in med school, I was actually away. I left my family,
Mhm.
my friend groups in California, and I was going to med school out of state. And that was also just in general very like isolating. And that support group came from, my activeness at church.
Mhm.
And, stepping away and like again that misalignment, stepping away like isolated me even further. And I think again, just pulling myself in three different directions.
Yeah,
Um, what maybe brought that or what like got me out of that? Um, I just remember like my parents came to visit me. My and again, I'm like very grounded like with my family. They came to visit me for spring break, and they just like knew, they just knew that something was like wrong mentally. And then I guess that's what they'd always say, like it's like you don't seem like yourself. And so they
mm,
came to visit me, and then like we went on a couple like day trips and like did a lot of hikes, and I just spent time with them and just like was able to like get back to maybe the way that I was feeling when I was, in that place, in that space. And maybe that's what kickstarted it. Cause that's honestly like the first thing that I remember, just like periods of isolation, periods of just like wanting to be alone. And
yeah,
then my parents coming to visit me that time. And I think you brought up an awesome point, like you had people also that were there supporting you like through that time. And I think a lot of times we maybe notice those things from our friends and whatnot, and sometimes we just don't know how to help.
yeah,
And I think that's
yeah.
that's a difficult thing as well, like when you see like your a close friend of yours going through something and you just don't know how to help. I think that's
Mhm.
like a that can yeah, that it just sucks.
Yeah, and especially like for example, if it's someone who's like older, like say a parent, you notice that maybe they're going through something, or they don't want to tell you, but you could tell they're going through something. Just
Yeah.
talking to them, and you want to say, I think you're going through something like that is affecting your mental health. It's difficult. I mean, how do you have that conversation? You know what I mean? Even with friends, like I'll notice that friends are going through something, but I think we have an obligation to say something, even if we have to find a way not to offend them and or to push them further away. But I think of I know that you're not caught up with Stranger Things.
No, not yet. Not yet.
But
Not
there's a
yet.
quote that stuck out to me. Like, you can cover yours, David, but there's a quote eventually that a character says to another character. This is so hard to do without spoilers.
It's okay.
But
It's okay.
yeah, but it's like what they were in a relationship, and one of them said like, I'm sorry that I wasn't there for you, right? And the person's like, no, I drifted away, it was my fault, I pushed you away. And then he's like, no, I saw you, I saw you
Mm,
distancing, I witnessed you doing that, I didn't do anything about it. You know what I mean? Because
mm,
I have friends that I've lost, because and I've noticed they were drifting away, but I didn't do anything because I
mm,
felt like it wasn't my place. I felt like maybe um I couldn't handle the burden of the relationship at the moment. You know what I mean? Which sounds very
mm,
selfish.
mm.
Um, but it's like I look back and there's regret, because I
Yeah.
mean, how do you salvage that kind of relationship knowing that you should have, but you didn't? And I think,
Mm,
I mean, what I can do forward is the relationships that I have now, that I have to let them know that I see you and I know what you're going. I see what you're going through. I may not know what you're going through, but I'm here because I see you. You know what I mean? I think it's what people want to feel is that they're seen. Some people I say, like especially the older generations who aren't like as aware as to how mental health impacts each and every one of us, maybe a little more resistance to have that kind of conversation. But I think us being there and somehow being persistent of letting them know that we're there is what's important. What do you think?
yeah, man, totally, totally. I think, yeah, I feel I actually I definitely relate with that feeling and that um just like I wish, it's like you always say
Mm,
that like to yourself, like I wish then you fill in the blank.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, man, that's definitely felt that. Definitely felt I'm just trying to think like back then, like what was I thinking? You know,
Mm,
what was I like were my problems, my anxieties while like we were running in parallel, and we're each going through separate things, like were my anxieties so overwhelming to me that I wasn't able to, do anything for someone that I cared about?
mm,
you know like what was it, and maybe that's part of that, like reflecting and but also like just reflecting on like that like regretful feeling, that feeling of like, was I just like so overburdened myself that I couldn't like
mm.
extend a hand, you
That's a good
know
point too, man.
you know
Really good point
and
too.
because everyone's going through their own storms, and you can't save a or it's harder to save people on a sinking boat if your boat's sinking too,
Hmm. Hmm.
and that's a hard balance to have. But also, like, honestly, living with that feeling of I wish I did something,
Yeah.
that's also hard. I don't even know what's worse, you
Hmm.
know I don't know, man. That's kind of crazy to think about, especially like because, dude, we always talk about just like thinking about things we've done in the past, the ways that we thought and grew.
Hmm.
And honestly, like I hope that like myself today would take it upon myself to do something,
Yeah.
right? I would hope.
Yeah. No, I agree. Man, it's making me like self-reflect right now in the moment.
Bro, in the
You
moment
know,
right now,
you
yeah,
know.
it's kind of crazy.
And I mean, I guess whoever's listening, if that's something that you're thinking about, I mean, you're not alone in thinking that way. You know, whether you're the person who we were maybe years ago, kind of expressing what we went through mental health. I mean, even to this day, we'll deal with mental health issues. I still battle with like feeling like I mean, we had an episode about feeling like you're falling behind or maybe you're just not doing enough. And then, Alyssa will call me out on things that, like, hey, you're doing this behavior again. Like you need to, to better our relationship.
Mhm.
But or if you're in the place where you notice that one of your friends or your family members are probably going in a certain direction, like if you're hearing this, probably it's a calling for you to reach out. You know what I mean? Or to ask for help. I think during that time, at least we in our heads, maybe not immediately thought about reaching out for help. Like because I think so when you hear other people's problems or like what's going on in this world, it gives you a good perspective where it's like, man, there's some people who have it worse than me, but it doesn't
Yeah.
belittle what you're going through,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
You know, and I guess it's a weird balance of that too. So much balance, but it's like at one point you have to reach out for help. You know what I mean? Because if you feel like you're sinking, like I mean, it's so hard to climb back out, right?
I think back to something that Dan actually said, when he was kind of describing like the things that he was going through.
Mm,
It's just like so simple. He said, listen,
mm,
like when you're going through your own stuff, and someone that cares for you and your just like your alignment or whatever it is, not even that you're aligned, but just cares about your physical health, cares about your mental health, cares about your spiritual health, and like they say something. I feel like when we're in that moment, like, at least I know this is for me, man. I didn't want to listen to anybody.
mm,
I wanted to, again, this is probably like they can definitely contributed, like I wanted to listen to the negativity. I
mm,
wanted to, yeah, I don't know. But at least I feel like in that moment, you don't want to just listen in general. That was for me at least. And so, when you do go through something, or when you, um, even from the other end, when you see somebody go through something, they may not be listening,
mm,
but you gotta stay maybe persistent, or find a way for them to listen. And if you are yourself are going through those things, like self-awareness of trying to open your ears and hear, actually listen. may go a long way, you know?
For sure. For sure. I think this was definitely a good like self-reflection after this
Oh,
previous episode. I
yeah,
think this was
man.
on our minds, just over this past like week. But I'm
Yeah.
glad that we were able to talk about it. Me and David, we the way we're talking now is like how we talk in person, I think.
Yeah,
Or like
yeah,
even when we hit each other up, a little more detail, that we share, but
yeah,
it's definitely where we and I suggest you find someone where you can have this type of trust and this type of transparency because
yeah,
like we always said, you can't do it alone.
yeah. And I think that's also part of the growth, right? That's part of um trusting, not trusting yourself to help yourself, but also trusting the people that are close to you to help you when you need to, because that we all need that. We're going to need that at some point. You want to make sure that that's something to definitely grow into. It's definitely something to keep in mind, especially, you never know when stuff's gonna happen, and you need that, and you'll reflect on it, and you don't want to be the person saying like, oh yeah, I wish this, I wish that.
Hmm.
You
Hmm.
know.
Yeah, it's actually a good point to bring up because Alyssa and I, when we go through we started doing this thing beginning of the year where we have these goals, right? It's not just like financial or career. We started to set goals for like our relationships with people, like with our friends
Mhm.
and our family members.
Yeah.
And those are things that you should track too. Like
Oh yeah.
if you have a certain relationship with somebody that you care about that you feel could be better, maybe you write that on paper what your goal is with that person. Like I'm going to spend quality time with this person like at least once a month or like once a week or whatever it takes.
Yeah.
But it goes along with what we teach here, and or not what we teach here, but we believe in with the Rec rounds is like through growth, and tracking this growth and
Yeah.
just having intention, right?
Mm. Yeah, dude, totally. Totally. That's a great idea. I'm gonna start doing that now. Oh man, yeah, like honestly, this is like just how we talk.
Yeah.
When we're not, or yeah, dude, I appreciate you, being transparent on the platform. And yeah,
Likewise, man.
yeah.